Ai Māori, this afternoon. Taua tirahi te maunga, awa puka te awa te pauri te iwi, mō te kāhau, engari kei te whānoho mō te wā. Good on Tiffany o tōku ingoa. Kia ora, my name's Dawn. I told everybody that I hail from the second land settlement, top of the North Island, or a place called Te Kau. Well, I'm proud to say I can stand on my mountain, which is nothing like Aoraki, and see both the Pacific Ocean and the Tasman Sea. And I am the team leader for the DVT. And I too did the kōrero on mana enhancement.
So we literally just want to open up this next half an hour to you. So there we go. All yours. That's it. As good as it.
Disorders, like most of my order walk and they'll have some sort of anxiety, post-traumatic stress, and those kind of research there's nothing about, a little bit about alcohol and drugs, but nothing about coexistence. I was wondering how that works with your research.
It just didn't come up. And sorry, the approach I took was very much their story. It was just open-ended, and so maybe that's why it didn't come up, because I didn't ask them about. I know they weren't in any medications for like anxiety or depression, but no. To be fair, there could have been some self-medication through alcohol and pot, but no, it didn't come up.
My name's Elise. I work with the New Zealand Defence Force along with my colleagues and Mike, but it can be for anybody. Is my voice too loud? Thank you. Just wondering, you said you worked with different ministries. Just wondering if you've worked with the New Zealand Defence Force in the past, and if not, would you think that it would be an interesting place with a point of difference when it comes to family violence to do some research or some work?
Suspense. So I've done some work with the Defence Force as part of the It's Not OK campaign, so I came down here to Burnham to 1 Battalion, which are also based in Lynn. I'm just trying to think of the operation. It was called Operation Respect, is what they did within the Defence Force, and it was around, I think it was brought about pretty much straight after I think he was a colonel in the Air Force, had been convicted of harassment and stuff like that. And a lot of it, when you think of the Defence Force, and it was something that I went into thinking that it would be the abuse and stuff like that, and the masculinity, the alpha male and everything like that, that it was coming from higher up, so sergeants on to privates and et cetera, but going around and talking, and there was over 1,000 that I ended up speaking to over about 6 days. A lot of the peer pressure and the stuff and the abuse that was happening was on the same level, so private against private and things like that, you know. So, and it was really well received, and it started a whole lot of conversations for the Padres and everything like that afterwards. So again, around, I think the more avenues we have to speak in this area, and the reality is there's a huge group in the Defence Force and stuff like that, and there's definitely stuff going on. Just recently there was the problems that arose in Wairuru around the training and stuff like that. So again, it reinforces to everybody, when you think of the police force, you think of defence and everything like that, not many people associate domestic violence or and that sort of stuff in those areas. So again, lifting awareness that it's in every walk of life. There's judges doing this stuff. You know, it's not just drug-inflicted gang members and stuff like that. So yeah, I have done some work with the Defence Force, and they were pretty open to what I had to say, and particularly around sexual assault.
Just a follow-on comment, we've done a bit of work with the Defence Forces and also Fire Service and Police, and I suppose we've talked a little bit today about the impact of different cultures and how as people from in the work that we do, having to be aware of different cultures. And I suppose what I was really aware in working in those spaces was the importance of taking time to learn that culture. Because I think if we come from an NGO culture or, you know, the sexual violence sector or the family violence sector, we can assume that how we talk about things is going to be palatable and be able to be heard. And I suppose my experience would be that taking time, like when we move into any family or talk with in any situation, just like the Defence Force or Fire Service, we have to take time to get to know their culture. Yes, this feels really important. Same with corrections, I'm sure. Yeah.
I'll just touch on this a little bit. So I'm able to go into to be on and talk to the young cadets there from the LSD. And what I have to say is I think it's pretty cool that they let ex-offenders or people with past to come in and tell their story. To say that it's not okay to treat females like this, it's not okay the way we were treated, and try and get our message across to the young cadets as well, at kind of that level there. So, you know, I'm pretty grateful that we're allowed to go into these places and tell our stories, you know, for the hope to open their hearts and their minds up to change. Yeah, so I'm allowed in there and I'm extremely grateful, and it's pretty cool that you're allowed in there too, bro. So hopefully that answers your question. Anybody else?
As I suppose, been brought up in the defence world, and when we talk around domestic violence, back in the day, you really didn't have a lot of support. So the padre was someone that you could only talk to. There was nothing else. So, in living that life for many years, it's great to see that now there are people going in. So they have finally, I suppose in a sense, started to open the door, because that is such a closed off community. When we talk defence, it's so closed off. So heads up to the ones that have been given the opportunity to get in there and do some mahi. So that's all I've got to say.
Kia ora, kia ora, kia ora.
Hi, I work at the Battered Women's Trust, Battered Women's Refuge. My question is, I stand on my soapbox quite often. I have a keen interest in the harms of and the effects of pornography, and that new social media and how easily it is with young boys, because I have an 8-year-old, so I worry about it. Do you see it in the perpetrator sector? Do you deal with that? Does it come up as something?
The question here is the impact of pornography through social media in the perpetration space.
Well, yeah, just the young boys getting their sexual education and how they think that women should be treated, and we see a lot of strangulation and within our space, and it's a worry for me. Is that something we're going to need to address down the line eventually?
I can touch on that just a small part. What we've noticed in our little group that we have, which these young guys come along by themselves, they're not made to come from judges or probation or whatever, they come into this group themselves. And you can see the behaviours that are being taught, you know, when you're driving down the road in the van and like, check her out, you know, whistling at girls, you know, and that's just become the normal. Showing photos on the phone, social media stuff, passing around photos, and it's become normalised. Yeah, 100%. And then when you see them get their feelings off that as well, it's so wrong. So what we try and do is not bark orders at them, because they'll run away and never come back. We try and engage with them in a kind of loving, indirect but direct way about how to drop those behaviours, and how would you feel if we were treating your sister or mother like that, you know, that kind of way. But 100% it's there and it's been normalised, and in that behaviour there,
then can lead on to more serious crimes, which I'm not saying those things aren't serious at all, but you know, they keep going and keep going and keep going until they might act in action, you know, off those feelings that they're getting off this stuff here. So does that answer a little bit just from my part?
Yeah, I mean, that you are aware of it, and that's, yeah, good. Then please
Yeah.
keep doing that.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll say is all the rehabilitation centres that I've been in, some of them, this is why it's so important that us people in these roles have to be so black and white about this stuff. If we turn a blind eye because it's easier to do our shift and we don't want to do an incident report about it, then this behaviour is going to stay. So we are paid to do a role to try and change people's lives. So let's do our job, and when we see these little behaviours seeping out, we have to act upon it, because it's not going to change if we're not acting it. Do you know what I mean? And for me growing up, that was normalised, and I had a lot of paid staff members in my life that were doing that behaviour themselves. Driving up and down Manchester Street, social workers, whistling at girls, it was okay to do that because it was too hard to do the job. So I'm not saying everybody is like that and is like that now, but it's just important that as social workers, psychologists, whatever we are, night shift managers, picking people up for meetings or whatever, just a van drive to the shop, challenge the behaviours 100%. Yeah?
And I think, I mean, obviously it's a really, really big topic, but the only thing I would say is that before we can start talking and having a really clear dialogue about pornography, we have to kind of start talking about sex. You know, and I think that we often don't have those conversations. And so to give people permission to talk about, you know, healthy sexual relationships and what languaging you use around that stuff. So there's a starting point there. And I think, again, we're not necessarily resourcing our parents and our organisations to have those basic conversations, but we're kind of putting on top of that to say, let's talk about pornography. So.
When I was a kid, pornography was sneaking the Playboy out from under Dad's mattress. But yeah, nowadays with the social media, and I mean, the Playboy was just a picture of a female figure. What's available to them now, and how it portrays the degradation of women. A lot of the stuff, it's not standard sexual relationships you see in the pornography that majority of these kids are seeing as they do grow up, or they do come through with some really unreal expectations of what their sexual relationship should be like, you know. So, and around perpetration, if there's psychological abuse going on in a home and physical abuse going on in the home, then you can guarantee that there's also some sexual stuff going around. And for perpetrators, a lot of it, you know, it even evolves around, and guys will talk about it all the time, where they make up sex, where that's the best they've had this week or this month and stuff like that. And the reality is, even trying to instill into them when we're having conversations afterwards, man, you've just been standing over her, or you've hit her for the last half an hour and you've instilled, you know, like stuff upon her, and now you feel good and you want to make up. What answer can she give you when you say, let's have sex? You know? So again, it's just lifting the awareness of the fact that, you know, if she says no to you, what do you think the possibility of the outcome could be, the consequence? So a lot of the times where you might, as the male, think, oh yeah, that's really cool, but you've actually pretty much just forced her into having sex, rape, whatever you want to call it, you know. So I think it's a huge issue within it, because a lot of it, and around, like you talked about, strangulation and stuff like that, you know. The police have identified that, so now it's a charge by itself. And whereas before it used to be called choking, you know, and all that sort of stuff. So it's starting to come to the head, but it's a huge area, and it's got its own area that it needs to be dealt with outside of, you know. And for some guys, it's like alcohol and drugs. It's an addiction that needs to be dealt with. Yeah.
This is probably following on from you. I was in a school 2 years ago doing some work, and I was listening to some young people, and every Friday night they go to a party, there'll be one woman who drank too much and the guys got on top of her. And so they didn't know that that was rape, which really, really surprised me. And they were just taking turns. And they were laughing about it as part of this youth intervention in the school. So I guess even before porn, understanding sex and human rights and legislation and what is coercion versus choice is all I can add to that conversation. But it does worry me that, and yeah.
Judy Smitheram, and I'm a social worker. Met you a couple of weeks ago, Dan, when you came to the Salvation Army where I work. Tomorrow is Women's Suffrage Day. We got the vote 125 years ago tomorrow. So I'm just interested to talk to you. I do a project in Christchurch for increasing the visibility of women. I've got a Facebook page, events, a whole lot of things that I'm doing to balance out spending my days with these men. So where do we see the woman's voice in this? I went to the youth workshop and we didn't actually get to hear much about the woman's voice because that's not your area of work, but it'd be interesting to hear where the woman's voice is in the domestic violence issue.
I'm going to give this to you guys.
No. Can I just have the question again? Sorry.
Where's the woman's voice in domestic violence? What can we do?
I think they've set me up. I don't know if I'm the right person to ask this, answer this. As a victim, I find it sort of like a bit of it's hard. No one wants to listen to a victim. No one wants to listen to a perpetrator. Actually, no one just wants to listen, So do we have a voice? That's the question. And if we have a voice, why isn't anybody listening to it? My whakaaro has always been that, if a wahine sort of, I can only relate it to the kōrero that I had in the breakout room, and I talked about the fact that after the beating that I got when I was 5 months pregnant, I still wanted to go back. I still wanted to go back. His brother was carrying me down the road back to my mother's place, and I'm telling him, turn around, take me back. I couldn't walk, but that's what I wanted him to do. So when we're talking about the woman's voice in violence, she has a voice, but sometimes no one's willing to hear actually what her heart's trying to say. And sometimes he's the worst one. He can be the worst one because, he knows that the best thing for him to do is to leave her. She knows that the best thing for her to do is to leave him. However, the still small voice that sits over here on her shoulder says, no, go back. So where is her voice in all of this? It's drowned out by all the other voices. I don't know how else to answer that. Yeah.
Kia ora. Awesome. You heard what it is. So from what I know is for me myself, there was a lot of programs inside the prisons which I could speak and have a chance to speak if I wanted to and have people to listen to. So what I would say is that I believe there needs to be more programs and hei wakatapus, for females, I know that Odyssey House is looking at opening up a new place at Montreal for females. I think it's a female alcohol and drug centre or something like that. And I'm not saying all these places are right and wrong or whatever, but I just think more places focus on helping females have a voice and helping to change. Like I know a lady who started as a volunteer in the females' prison, teaching them barista training. And yeah, she's a barista doing coffee, but the stuff that she speaks to me about, that the females are bringing up, not with the prison guards, because they feel voiceless, you know, inside the wings and stuff, but they're bringing up making coffee. But then Vanessa's got nowhere to take that stuff, and she's not, she doesn't have the resources or understanding what to do. So I guess my kind of answer to that is I think more stuff wrapped around females, why not? You know what I'm saying? Does that kind of...
And I'd also say, just following on from what you're saying, is that sometimes the question, well, there's lots of questions, but what does the voice mean? Because I think as we know more about trauma, then my voice might be saying, take me back. And part of that journey is understanding why does my voice say, take me back. And so some of the having to slow down, and we've got our agendas as organisations saying, let's look what our expectation of what safety looks like. But in fact, that might be a slower process for you. Because part of understanding about trauma might be, well, actually, there's a really good reason why my brain keeps telling me to go back. And I don't need judgment. What I need is to understand that for myself and to be able to make those decisions in a way that feels, safe and at a good time for me. And that might not make sense to you. So we might hear it, but we don't necessarily understand the voice.
I just want to finish off over here, sorry. In regards to, we've just finished our workshop on mana enhancer. So if we talk about the woman's voice, it is for us, it's around koau, who am I? And for me to know who I am, I need to know where to stand and how to do that. So it's, yes, I have a voice, but my voice is stronger if I know who I am. So even though it might take me a few, I suppose, walks that way and a run that way and a skip over there, I've got to make that journey to get so I stand like this and say, this is me. This is who I am, and now I will have this conversation. Ka pai?
It took them 25 years to get the vote.
Kia ora. Kia ora koutou. I've been working for Women's Refuge now for a long time, and the woman's voice is in refuge. And we've been around for a long time, and we've been supporting women fleeing domestic violence for a very long time. And I must say that apparently it all started down here. And kia ora to your sister over there. And it's Women's Suffrage Day tomorrow, but we didn't get the vote. Māori women didn't get the vote. And whilst that was a breakthrough for us all, sisters, today, in terms of our voice, I'd just like to say that we are here, and we were here way back in the early 70s, and it's now 2018, and we're still here, and we're still fighting, and people out there are still not listening, and but I have to say that I feel that we are still at the forefront of domestic violence, and so that's where I'll leave it. Thank you.
I'm just aware of the time. We've got a couple over here, one here. So we'll take those three. Yeah? Okay.
I just want to kind of no, I don't need one. I just want to reflect on and Bates, because I'm also need to be listened to, and you're right. So the way we can do that is just take more than one voice. It takes a lot of voices, and we're all here. So I say to you, keep empowering yourselves, and one day we'll all step out of that victim like I have.
Kia ora. I can't help but think, Jeremy, that what we spoke about this morning in terms of men taking some ownership and supporting this for men might take some of the heat off where women have pioneered on our behalf. We need to think about that as an integrated sector here and how we do that better.
Kia ora. Sexual education has been in our schools for a long time. What do you all think about family violence being educated to our children? I'm a big believer in DD education, and I'd like to see it start happening.
I agree wholeheartedly. For me, you know, I work at He Wakatapu, but I'm sick of being the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, and I believe that it needs to start in primary. Actually, I think it needs to start in our kohangas and our play centres and stuff like that. I believe that's where it needs to start. You know, I've always sort of been one of those that have sort of said, I don't care if I lose my job because there's no violence. You know, so yeah, definitely go the kohangas and, you know, let's start there because they need it. You know, that's my whakaaro.
100%. Let's get everything. Let's get the realities of what is actually happening out here in our lives and affecting our community and creating so many victims and suicides and all that kind of stuff, neglect everything, and speak the truth to our children about what they will experience. 100%. Alcohol abuse, drugs, methamphetamine, synthetics, suicide, how I treat a female, relationship skills. I'm not sure why we're not doing this stuff. For me, it's black and white, 100% yes. We need to be teaching the realities of what's happening in our communities. Yeah, and also understand how hard it will be as well.
I think one of the challenges is that there is some really good programs out there already, but we just don't apply them consistently. So I think one of the challenges is not to necessarily feel the pressure to reinvent the wheel, but to look at how do we resource some of those programs that have actually been really well studied and researched and are in lots of schools, but they're just not picked up. And I think, again, it's around we can start preventatively and with positive messages because that sets that foundation. Yeah.
When we first started doing what we were doing and going around, the MSD or the campaign, we identified the fact, I spoke myself this morning that I was already perpetrating domestic violence at the age of 10 against my mum. And a lot of these kids that you see at school are already displaying behaviours at primary school level. And for so many years, they've just been the naughty little prick who comes to school, or he's withdrawn in the back of the classroom all the time. No one's sort of looking behind what's causing that behaviour, promiscuity in young girls and stuff like that. You know, it's always frowned upon and stuff like that. For us to try and get into the schools, it was really hard because of the red tape and the content, because people were not ready to hear the content of what we were talking about, particularly from a perpetrator's point of view. And a lot of the times when we went to school to ask if we could, they would want to send out forms to the parents to say, is it all right for your child to hear this content? And you could guarantee that all the families that sent back saying, no, I don't want my kid to hear this, are the ones that need to be sitting in that classroom because, you know, that normal behaviour and stuff like that. So definitely we need to add this element, and it's changing, you know, like you're talking about promoting proper relationship stuff and all that, but it's also shifting the norm for these kids, letting them know that it's not normal what's going on in their home. And again, it's a really hard one because if you start to engage with the children, then you need to be engaging with that whole whānau. Because you can give them some really good skills or tell them some stuff at school, but they still have to go back into that environment after school. So it's, you know, it's educating the whole community, the whole whānau around what it is, not just the kids at school, because the reality is they can't go home and say, Dad, you're a fuckwit, or, you know, your behaviour's shit and stuff like that, because they're just going to run into brick walls and stuff like that. So I think it needs to be a holistic, you know, like work as part of what everyone's talking about today. It's a personal journey for a lot of people, but also having the whole thing working. So personally, you work as a guy, you work by yourself, your partner works and does a course, then you come together and you start doing it as a family and stuff like that, and the effects on your kids and stuff. But it does need to be introduced at a level, you know, at a really low level, not secondary school. Secondary school, I believe some of these guys are already on a path. So the earlier you intervene, the better.
Just want a qualifier, because we do know that there is family violence, intimate partner violence amongst our Takatapoi sisters, brothers, non-binary, amongst the queer community. And I'm just aware of some pronouns that are being used. And so I just want to put it out there that the queer community needs to be part of this as well, and the non-binary in terms of gender. And just in terms of the blinkers that I talked about before earlier, that our tunnel, that the queers are beating one another up.
Cool. We need to finish. We're going to wrap up here. And before we do, I just want to honour each and every one of you. You, Jeremy, from the get-go this morning, the transparency that you bring with your story of transformation and change that makes it possible, you know. Beatrice and Dawn, the crew, thank you so much for what you've shared this afternoon and for being involved here. Rion and Dan, I know you kind of might have got hustled in here, but you bring a kōrero and to this mahi that we need. I want to honour you too. Catherine, thank you so much for the work you do with our families, with children, with the sector. And Michael, for your ongoing research and heartbeat for this work and where we can extend to as a sector. We've been honoured truly to have all of you as part of this day. Thank you all for being here. We plan to do definitely doing another one in February. So far, February the 13th, so mark that in the calendar. We're going to try and do another 2 half days between now and then. That may look a little different, and we want to be guided by you as much as we can around those. Chanel, can I look to you, brother? Thank you.
Tēnā koe, Blair. Kua riro māku te honore hei whakakapi tō tātou hui mo te rānei. Engari me mihi ka tika kia koe lie mo tēnei rā whakahirahira. Kia tātou mā, koutou kua eke ki runga i te papatū waiwai i tēnei rā. Me mihi ka tika kia koutou huri noa ki tō tātou nei whare, aha kua nōhea, aha kua kōwai. Me mihi ka tika kia koutou katoa. I hare mai tēnei rā ki te whakanui i tēnei kaupapa tino miharo e pāna ki te oranga mo tō tātou whānau. Nō reira, nei rā mātou te tū ki te mihi atu kia koutou me te karakia. Nō reira, me tū tātou mo te karakia. E te atua kaharawa humai te kaha ki a mātou. E whai nei te mātou ranga i roto anō hoki o mahi tohu. Ko koe te ringa mātou e manaaki nei i a mātou katoa i ngā wā katoa. Moake, ake, and everybody said, Āmine. Kia ora.